in just about one. Okay, thank you. All right, we still have some folks coming in, so we'll wait just a second longer. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. That month always flies, doesn't it? We're so excited to have you joining us again for our PA Proud Showcase, and thrilled and honored to have Northeastern School District with us this evening. In addition to myself tonight from the board from the Reading League, we have our Vice President, Don Burkhart, with us this evening, and our Secretary, Erin Amy. Thanks for being here. And I believe our Treasurer, Deb Fulton, is going to be joining at some point as well. So it is my complete honor to introduce Dr. Randy Payne, Christy Geis, Lisa Slatsky, and Amanda Alloway, the dynamic team from Northeastern School District, to share their Science of Reading journey with you. I have the special privilege and honor to have been interfacing and partnering with them for, I think we're going in on almost 3 years now, a long time. And boy, it's been such a pleasure to be a part of their journey. The leadership is amazing. Dr. Randy Payne, her leadership has led the way for the work that's happening at Northeastern School District. And the reading specialist team, the teachers there, they are just absolutely amazing. They are part of Pennsylvania's Dyslexia Pilot Project Expansion. And I'm very honored to turn it over to them so they can share their journey with you. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Payne to start us off. Thank you, Randy and team.
Thank you, Pam. Yes, so we are very pleased to be able to share a little bit about our journey this evening. I'm enormously fortunate to be able to work with such a wonderful team at Northeastern. I try to just stay out of their way and remove obstacles that other people put in their way. No, I'm kidding. So that they can continue to do their good work. And having said that, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. So this evening we'll start by giving you a little bit of information about our school district. And so just to give you an idea of who we are, we're in the northeastern part of York County. We have about 52 square miles and a population just under 22,000 residents. So we have both rural and suburban communities in our school district, 3 boroughs, 3 townships. And we are in a rapidly growing area of the Commonwealth. As far as the actual school district, we have 8 schools, and you can see the breakdown there. Of those schools, 3 of our 4 K-3s are Title I schools, and both of our intermediate schools are Title I schools. We have a total of 285 teachers. A host of other professional staff and support staff for a complete total of 488 employees. This evening, we have 4 of our 13 reading specialists with us, including we have reading specialists the whole way up through our high school. So we have 2 employed at our high school, in addition to 8 at our K-3 level, and 3 at our 4 to 6 level. And just as a frame of reference, we have a really experienced overall staff with over 94% of our teachers having 3 or more years of experience teaching. Our current student enrollment is just under 4,000, and you can see about 42% of those students are economically disadvantaged. We have a small but growing English learner population, about 15%, so really close to the state average of students with IEPs. Primarily learning support. Our second highest disability category is speech and language, followed by other health impairment, and then autism, to give you a frame of reference. And then our student demographics, you can see we are overwhelmingly Caucasian population, with a growing African-American and Hispanic population in our school district. And now I will be happy to turn it over to Lisa, one of our reading specialists, to talk about the state of the district.
Hello. So I'm going to kind of be talking about our transition to the science of reading. So we're going to look a little bit before what kind of was going on in the district before, and then after, and currently and our look forward. So before, that's what we're going to talk about first. If you could go to the next slide, please, Randy. Thank you. So we were thinking about talking to everyone this evening. We were looking about what did it look like before in our district, and we were saying how we were creating guessers, not readers, compensators, really good compensators. Some of them were reading fluently, you would never have guessed, but and maybe even comprehending, but not really reading and decoding those words like we want them to, and having them be mapped in their brains. So we figured that out first. And looking at how we were using leveled readers, before we're using leveled readers in our guided reading groups, which we now call small skill groups. And we're using word walls. Obviously that does not match science of reading. We want it to be speech to print, so we want those sound walls, those sound spelling walls. And we didn't have a very good use of how we get those dolch, fry, whatever you want to call those high frequency words out to students. Memorization was what we were looking at. That's not what we want them to be doing. And we started to see some issues, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to fix those. So we thought, how about in our tier 2, we'll do our interventions and we'll be able to patch the problem there. But we weren't addressing our tier 1. So down there's a little key: work smarter, not harder. So let's look at what we're currently working on now. So we've decided to strengthen that tier 1 by rewriting our curriculum. We have implemented many different programs from in the past, I guess, 2.5 years. Is that, I think, about right, Randy? So Haggerty and kindergarten through 2nd grade, foundations in kindergarten, and then into 3rd grade. We have created explicit vocabulary lessons modeled after Isabel Beck's book and Anita Archer. We have in kindergarten through 2nd and into 3rd, and we have decodables, geodes, kindergarten through 2nd, and starting to orthographically map those trick words or heart words, the heart parts. And we have sound walls now, lots and lots of sound walls. There we are showing a little bit of our growth, some current numbers for this year in kindergarten. And this is just from beginning of the year to the middle of the year. So looking at our kindergarten composite there, at the beginning of the year, we had 42% of our K students at or above benchmark, but we just did our Acadians for middle of the year, and we're now at 75% at or above benchmark. And that's a whole reading composite. So looking at every Acadians test that we had given them. In 1st grade, because of switching to science of reading, we really were looking at the whole words read and nonsense word fluency, and seeing great growth there for our first graders. Beginning of the year, 55% to now 85%, being at or above benchmark for reading whole words read and nonsense word fluency. So some great gains there that we're seeing. Now we're moving on to how we enacted all of those changes, and Steph will be taking over.
Hello. So when we got together and tracked back to when our journey actually started, we went all the way back to 2015, where some reading specialists and administration attended the 95% group conference in Chicago and came back with a lot of things to share with the reading team and the staff. And then in 2016, and at that time, we were implementing a lot of 95% group interventions during our intervention, win period, or tier 2 instruction. So the reading specialist and maybe some classroom teachers with small groups. So everything that we were doing with 95% group was happening at tier 2. In 2016 till now, we started implementing the letters training modules 1 through 3 for all of our K4 teachers and administrators. And then we also have had the letters training modules 4 through 6 for teachers, and that's ongoing. We did the 95% group phonological awareness kit training, as well as the phonics chip kit training for the staff. In 2019, we switched from Dibbles. We were using Dibbles Next to Acadience for our benchmark assessments. And also in 2019, we attended, the reading specialist team attended the KSLA conference in Hershey. And I believe that's where I first met Pam, and we went to her presentation in Scarborough's Rope, and we were all getting excited, and we met Anita Archer there, and she was talking about explicit instruction, and it was a really big, I think, weekend or couple days for our reading team as a district to hear all of these things about the science of reading. And then in 2019, after attending that conference, and we started the dyslexia pilot program through Patent. And that was a 3-day training that we went to as a team. And that's really when well, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but that was really our eye-opening moment. We, as a reading team, K-12, went and made presentations of our state of literacy to the district, to the different buildings. So everybody from K to 12 was aware of our state of literacy. And we traveled around to the schools and presented that, and as well to our school board. Then we started having after school professional development trainings focused on the science of reading. In 2020, our Apple group training, we started with the program OG in 3D, and that was for the reading specialists, learning support, speech, and school psychologists. So we were all trained in that program to implement with our students for intervention. And then 2021, we have some letters trainers on the reading specialist team, and they're here with us tonight. In 2021, we also did some science of reading book studies. And another big thing, when we were making all these changes in our curriculum and adjusting our instruction and changing what our reading instruction looks like, we said goodbye to the DRA. So we actually started writing our curriculum, and I said before, our big eye-opening moment was when we were at the patent training and we were listening to the science of reading, and we all just were sitting around. We were lucky this was happening in 2019 because we were all sitting around the table together and looked at each other and thought, oh my goodness, we can't go back tomorrow and do what we did yesterday. So I think that was pretty powerful as a team when we were all looking at each other, feeling the same way about what our instruction looked like. So we started to rewrite our curriculum for kindergarten in 2019 and first grade 2020. And the original plan was to roll out the curriculum in the spring of kindergarten that year to kind of, test it out, but COVID happened and we shut down. So we rolled both of them out at the same time in the fall, both kindergarten and first grade. So with that, with the new learnings that we found, we changed our guided reading. We talked about guided reading versus skill-based groups, and we went to focus more on those skills in those instructional groupings. We had explicit instruction vocabulary lessons that we wrote into the curriculum for K through 2. We have heart word lessons that we also wrote for the teachers to use to map those heart words instead of just memorizing them. We made the big switch from sound walls to word walls. And I think that big switch from when we were presenting the sound walls to the staff, I think that's when we had that, we tracked back to when we started, because we didn't just buy cards and put them up on the wall and say, here's our sound wall. We really had a lot of planning that went into this before that moment that we never, I don't think, really sat down and thought about until we started planning our sound wall instruction, and thought we really did have a lot of planning and staff development that went into all of this before we started to implement the sound walls. We have our level readers versus our decodables, and we have a lot of discussions about that every week in our teachings, and when it's appropriate to use decodables and when would it be appropriate to use a leveled reader. And we've really strengthened the phonological awareness skills in our students, but also in our staff, and educating them and giving them that PD on what it is and why we need to do that. And in tier 1, second grade, we just started implementing that, and we're working through that curriculum this year with our second grade teachers.
All right, so I'll be talking about overcoming some of our biggest obstacles. So shifting our mindset still remains our biggest obstacle. And this, I think, was our watershed moment that initiated the shift of thinking is also very different for each of us. So my own personal moment, I think, came about very unexpected. And it was in January of 2019 that I began taking coursework at Mount St. Joseph University with Lisa, who spoke earlier, and they came highly recommended. And this was coincidentally also around the same time that Emily Hanford was participating in our class discussions. And we were kind of unraveling the psychology of reading together. This also was my second time participating in letters modules, which we were trained in almost 3 years prior in 2016. And I mentioned that because my personal shift could have happened years ago. It could have happened in 2016, but I wasn't ready for it. I had just had my second child at that time. And so I feel like that's important because we can't expect our teachers to make the shift in accepting, the science of reading immediately. But I was primed. So I feel like we know as teachers that knowledge is compounded. We know that with our students when we're talking about background knowledge, right? The more that they bring to a topic, the more they're able to, soak up. So I was primed to accept the shift. And, with the discussions that were led by Dr. Amy Murdoch and Emily Hanford's reporting, it kind of just fueled my desire to learn more. So the journey is different for everyone, and knowledge builds up like compound interest. And the famous quote is, when you know better, you do better. So when we had the opportunity to participate in Patton's dyslexia pilot program, and we sat there, as Steph mentioned, as a K-3 team through, and with some kindergarten teachers with our initial training, this was our watershed moment, I think, as a district. And this is what led to our swift discussions that were like, we need to do something different. We need to adjust tier 1 instruction. We need to rip down those posters that have some of the reading strategies on it that we knew and loved. And that was, no fault of ours. But we need to do something different to reflect what we learned and just continue to learn about the science of reading. And Patton was super significant in getting that ball rolling. So unfortunately, this also happened during the year of COVID, which was definitely a curveball for us and still is. So this was an obstacle. We were trying to collaborate and consider next steps and revise curriculum, but it was also kind of a blessing in disguise because we had more flexibility to be able to participate in all of those free webinars and trainings that would not have been possible to help grow our knowledge that were being offered to us during COVID. And we're very fortunate in our buildings that we work with kids. So we, are not only working with our teachers, but we work a lot with our students, and we were kind of taken away from them as they disappeared into the virtual world. So we were using our time to make good use of it in writing curriculum. But we weren't just writing curriculum for a brick and mortar world. We were also writing it for our remote world and what that looked like, which was a whole new challenge. So we had monthly PD sessions that Patton helped us with, and they focused on areas like phonological awareness and heart words, sound walls, decodable readers, lots of different topics. We also had district level monthly meetings because we were away from each other. So we brought the grade level team of curriculum writers in virtually in our first year of implementation. And that's where we brought all of those difficult questions and concerns from the team, and we tried to address some of our strengths and weaknesses. And COVID has definitely made it difficult for data comparison reasons, because there are so many factors that we have to consider and we have to try and isolate. So, who received remote instruction for the full year or half the year or a blip of the year? Which students have been through multiple quarantines, because that is certainly difficult. And which students have received new curriculum all in the same moment of time. So we're pretty proud, I think, that we actually achieved curriculum revision during this time, considering all of that. We also work really closely with a few nearby colleges and universities to provide some student teaching experiences, quite a few actually. And regrettably, we aren't necessarily seeing a shift in their preparation that reflects an understanding of the science of reading. And this is also largely part of Emily Hanford's work and what she's drawing attention to. So shifting the mindset, I think, will continue to remain an obstacle until we can kind of accept that new teachers are also coming with the background knowledge that they need to be able to offer their experience that reflects some research-based practices in the science of reading. So there are many obstacles, there will always be, and we always just kind of have to do our best to accept them and stay positive, and they'll continue through our journey. And now we have some advice from Emily.
Hi, okay. Well, at Northeastern School District, our Science of Reading journey is well underway, but we're continually learning and growing. Every day, I feel like we learn new things and have better and deeper discussions. So when we sat down and started thinking back about our journey and really looking back, thinking about advice, we came up with 4 big things that we really felt contributed to our success in this journey. So the first thing that we really felt was important was just having that trust, and building that trust takes a lot of time, but we're really asking for a huge mindset shift from everyone. And so, it leaves you in a position where you really do need to be open to looking at your current reality. And that involves being completely vulnerable, and to have that vulnerability and make everyone feel comfortable, it takes that level of trust. So it takes time, but it's definitely a two-way street. Everybody involved needs to have that vulnerability and trust each other and be okay with making mistakes and learn and grow together. So it's all about that building culture, and that definitely starts with developing trust between everyone. The second thing we felt like was very helpful for us was starting with a common knowledge base. So like some of my colleagues talked about earlier, we have all of our K-4 teachers trained in letters, and 2 of our reading specialists are trainers in that now too. And it was really helpful to hear the same message, because that is something that we could latch onto. And like Christy said, it kind of primes everyone for that mindset shift, because they have something to attach this new knowledge base to. So having that knowledge base was super important. It helped us all develop an understanding of some of those really important frameworks that we know: Scarborough's rope, Airy's phases, the 4-part processor, all of those good things that we know are important frameworks to how students learn to read. So when we're sitting down with teachers and we're having these conversations about what that application piece really looks like and how they feel about what's happening in their room and what kind of results they're getting, we're constantly bringing those conversations back to those frameworks that we all, are striving to understand better and better. So that common knowledge base, I think, for us was just absolutely huge. The next piece that we felt contributed to our success was just having this ongoing communication. It was over communicating always, because it is a living, growing, changing process. And so we're constantly learning things. We're all learning as well. So as we learn, we want to share that. And that means we're tweaking things, because we're always trying to get better. But as we tweak things and we grow and we change, that communication piece still has to be there, because you are really vulnerable and you're learning and growing. And like I said, it's okay to make mistakes. And it leads us into that transparency piece. We were all very open with the fact that, Christy said it earlier, we were teaching kids to be great guessers and great compensators, and that wasn't even that long ago. So we're learning and we're growing and we're changing things, and it's not going to be perfect, which is totally okay. But that transparency piece is really important, so that you can learn together, you can grow together, and you can make mistakes together. being perfect is not it's the ultimate goal, but being perfect, isn't really the goal. It's getting better, and it's making those small changes, like Christy said, that just compounds the way knowledge does. All right, moving on to that next slide. Yeah, so thinking about sustainability moving forward, a lot of those factors that we felt like contributed to our success, we want to keep in place as we're moving forward. So Steph talked a lot about our timeline and how we've worked with kindergarten through second grade in the winter currently now, and in the spring of 2022, we're going to be taking a really good look at third grade and starting our third grade focus. So it's going to involve a lot of professional development and curriculum revision as well. So Patton is going to continue to be a huge game changer for us in helping to make that shift with third grade coming up. All of those trainings are centered around the science of reading, and Pam and Jenny and we all come together and think about topics that we think connect to the science of reading that our teachers specifically need. So that PD has been really, really helpful and just a great resource for us. We also then can continue that as a team of reading specialists and administrators with some in-house professional development, and that's district-wide during our district professional development days, but it's also at the building specific level when our teachers have weekly meetings before school, and we get to talk about all those things and just continue those conversations and deepen that knowledge. The last part, of course, will be revising the curriculum for third grade so that it vertically aligns to what we've done in K2. Looking ahead then to 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, they're next. So in the fall, they're going to all three be taking those PD sessions in-house and through Patton, and they're going to be writing that curriculum, getting ready to implement the following year. Gosh, when I say all of that out loud, that's a lot that's going to happen. It will, and it's going to be awesome. So in the winter and the spring, we're going to be looking at more into third grade tier 1. Oh, wait, can we go to the next slide? Sorry. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So after we implement the curriculum, we know it's really important to not just make those changes and then kind of let it drop and say we did it, it's done, wonderful. We know we want to keep coming back and looking at data, analyzing, reflecting. That's a living, breathing document. So it's something we always want to come back to. So curriculum writers across the whole district met monthly in the year of implementation just to discuss, to reflect and adjust, and then take those messages back to their grade level teams, talk to them, get their thoughts, and then come back to that curriculum writing team. So it was a lot of communication and a lot of check-ins, and that's something that we're going to continue with each grade level after they implement new curriculum. We also, like I said, had those weekly meetings with teachers with each grade level to continue those discussions and provide support as needed, because it looks so different, not just at every grade level, but in every class with each reader and where they are in their progress. And then, of course, kind of goes without saying, we're consistently looking back at that data. We're using Acadians, lots of other classroom data, building level data as well, to reflect on our effectiveness of instruction. And we're very transparent about all of those things with our teachers to keep that communication going as well. Those mindset shifts are really, really tough. We're growing our knowledge along the way, and we're continually coming back to it. So that's something that we know we need to continue as we move forward. So I feel like we just threw a lot out there summarizing the last few years. So I think I'll throw it back to Pam, but I know we'll have some time for questions too, if anyone has some. I know I saw some pop up in the chat box.
Yes, there were some questions in the chat box, and Suzanne had put a question or two in the chat box. So Suzanne, if you feel comfortable, you could just unmute and share out your questions, or I can share them, whatever is most comfortable for you.
Oh, sure, thank you.
Sure.
I was just wondering, since this is all kind of new for you guys to learn as professionals, what about our parents who didn't learn phonics and surely aren't experts in the reading and teaching reading? What kind of advice are you giving parents to support their young readers at home? I mean, we were all told, memorize sight words and make sure your kid is reading 20 minutes a day and find their right reading level, right, with leveled readers, and let them go on their own. And now we have these new methods, which you guys are learning and is actually better for developing readers and not guessers. So how are you supporting families that are like, okay, how do I help my child? one. And two, like, are they asking like, well, what's my child's reading level? How do I know if they're on grade or not? And then my second question was about making decodable readers, accessible to the home environments. Are you partnering with like the local libraries to make sure they have decodable readers available to families? Thank you.
Great questions, and they can share how they're engaging parents.
Right.
I don't know.
I feel like maybe we could have done a better job about, providing kind of an overall framework of what has changed to our parents in the district. But in our building, I know we've offered some parent letters, and these mostly go out to our title students who are struggling readers anyway. But we've also offered some parent letters that kind of explain how to, learn letters and sounds with your kids, and some multi-sensory ways of doing that at home with materials that they have available to them. And we always do this during conferences when we have, those individual conferences with families. And that's especially when, our title families are asking, because they're familiar with, they're hearing about their level in the past, what that looks like. And so we've just had the conversation of, we're not necessarily worried about what level they're reading. We want to know where their skill is at. And so we talk about some of those assessments that we give them and how they're performing on those assessments. Like we would give a phonics screener, for instance. We use the one from 95% group, the phonological awareness screener, and then we also use the phonics screener. So we would kind of go through the conversation and their skill deficits. As far as getting some of those decodable resources to them, it's a great question to start kind of partnering with libraries to be able to see what resources they're able to help provide our community, and not something I had considered. So I feel like, maybe that's a direction that we could use to support our community. I know this marking period, especially we're working really hard to get decodables or decodable passages in the hands of our kids. Last year, I think because this was our first year with curriculum changes and because we were in kind of a more virtual world, it was a struggle to get actual physical decodable books in their hands. We definitely have more decodables in their hands this year, but we also are, I think, feeling kind of apprehensive about sending some of those new texts home with our students. So we're just starting to now, be able to send them home, and we have some printable versions to send home to them as well, and start to build that connection with families and provide them resources that are, better for them than just letting them choose a leveled reader that we would have typically let them choose from in our classroom.
Yeah, I was wondering, sorry, just to follow up on that, because I think it's also important to just encourage the families to read to the child, because, I think the background knowledge, like you were getting at, I think, that even if they don't understand how to teach their child phonics or work with the decodables, families still have an important role in building vocabulary and that background knowledge, just encouraging them to read to their child. And I don't know how expensive some of these online programs are that, like ABC 1, 2, 3 or whatever, Learning A to Z, and those type of, I can't think of all the other ones, but they have like the online ebooks with small districts that might not be, I used to be in Prince George's County, Maryland. So they have like access to, it's a larger district, so they may have more money. I don't know, but there's decodable readers there, but there's also just, to build background knowledge, it's just a lot of audio books so that they're still reading comprehension level stuff, so they can hear, first grade level material, even if they don't have the decodable skills, they're still building comprehension. So just to reinforce, keep reading to your child, at least to build that knowledge at home. So thank you.
Yeah, Suzanne, I'm glad you mentioned that. And just to add to Christy's comment about working with parents, one of the other things we offer, actually, it'll be promoted here within the next few weeks, is specifically for our K1 Title I families, kindergarten and first grade Title I families. Reading with Randy is what I call it. And it's sessions for parents and their children to come. And we have, like little kits put together with books and materials. Moving away from the sight word flashcards to not doing those anymore in the Reading with Randy bins, but working on those multisensory ways to help them practice letters and sounds with their children, and then also some decodable readers, and then books that the parents should read to their child with, like a retelling cube, comprehension strategies to accompany that. So that's another way that we work with our families to give them some instruction on that.
And another resource I have used for families, especially for our kindergarten students, is I've sent them actually the Reading Rockets website, because there is tons and tons of information for parents on there, and great activities to do, multi-sensory activities. So I do send that out to some of my families that ask for extra help in that way, especially those kindergarten parents.
Thank you, Suzanne, for the question and for the great answers, Christy, Randy, and Lisa. There was a question from Sharon Israel. And Sharon, you can unmute yourself, or I'll be glad to read it. And I see Suzanne Oliver has her hand raised, and Erin Amy had some questions, and Tanya Rett. So we have lots of questions coming your way. Sharon, would you like to unmute and ask your question, or would you like me to read it? You can put it in the text if you don't want to talk. Okay. Yes, the question around
room.
go ahead.
No, I was just asking. No, I was just yeah. I was just asking. I didn't see the bottom of some of the screens, but it could be my technology.
All right.
Trying to sort of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Erin,
you.
do you want to hop in there? And then we have some other questions. I'll check it out. Erin, did you want to ask questions?
Sure. We have been working with districts also moving away from the DRA, and one of the mind shift pieces that is difficult is reporting whether or not kids are reading at grade level. And one of the barriers that I've experienced is the report card. So I'm wondering if your report card has shifted, if you're using other data in addition to Acadians that you're collecting to share in that report of progress, how your students are doing. So just wondering about that.
All right, I'll start again. So in our Title I progress reports, we had the DRA like bar across the top, and we had highlighted like at what point of the year they were, and then it just kind of grew throughout the year. So we completely redid our Title I progress report, and it's definitely skill-based. So so-and-so is able to, and so-and-so can continue to work on. And we pretty much sit down with all of those assessments that we give. We use Acadian's data. We use our screeners. We use progress monitoring. We send home our progress monitoring graphs. So it's definitely, we have a lot of language, like can read a consonant, vowel, consonant, and that is a closed syllable, and this is what a closed syllable is, and these are some examples of closed syllables. So they've become not so much of a narrative as they are more of a bulleted point with lots of examples of what they can do and what we're continuing to work on. Thinking about like the general classroom teachers report card, they're also very skill-based. A huge shift was just adding like those phonological awareness skills. And for kindergarten, we pretty much use 95% group and the PA kit and their materials. So we're using the PASI as our tool to monitor progress. So we're reporting how students have done on that assessment. So we're looking at those kind of beginning early phonological awareness skills for kindergarten and more advanced skills for first grade. They're definitely more skill focused, and there's lots of ongoing conversation about report cards, and they're very much imperfect, but we're working on it.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Christy. Suzanne Oliver, do you want to unmute? Would you like to unmute?
Yes, sure.
Question?
Hi, my name is Suzanne Oliver. I just want to thank you so much for doing this. I am a literacy coach from New Jersey, and thanks to a fabulous colleague of mine, she introduced me to the science of reading. She's taught me a lot. I listened to the Amplify podcast. I've been looking at the Reading League, all of these things. So one of the things right now that we struggle with in our district, and I was wondering how you go about doing this, is I heard you say that you got the teachers trained in the letters training and, doing a lot of trainings weekly. We have grade level meetings, but we have trouble getting subs right now. So how do you go about getting people on board? Like, I don't want to be mean when I say this, but like during the summer would be a great time for teachers to come together and learn. But sometimes it's very hard if you don't value that. So how do you get everyone on board if you do have a problem getting subs so that you can't really train them? I mean, the coaches, we're trying to do a great job at educating teachers, but one 40-minute block a week really isn't cutting it. And we are making the transition. We did just purchase Heggerty. We have OG training, but we really need to get more knowledge into our teachers. So how do you go about doing that?
I'm happy to respond to that. So a couple of different things, because that's a really fair question, especially right now with the substitute shortage. So we did prioritize some staff that we did pull out for 3 days for letters training this year. 4 days, 3 days. 3 days, thank you. So we did do that one time this year, but primarily the trainings in the summer and after school. So in the summertime, I use Title II funding for professional development to compensate staff to come in. And now with the ARP ESSER and the 7% set aside, there's a required allocation for reading. And I didn't see anything in there that told me that we couldn't use that to compensate staff to come for professional development. So I think those are options. Also, with the after school sessions, our teacher contract allows the administration to call an average of one meeting or professional development outside of the teacher's contractual day a week. So I just simply communicated with the building administrator saying, we are having literacy training, science of reading training these weeks of the year. And you should not schedule anything else outside of the student day. And that worked out really well. Having said that, the other thing I'll say is that once we started and folks got a little bit of the understanding, I think they would have come regardless, because once you start to understand the importance, then you want to have the skill set to do it correctly. So I think people started coming then, not because it was a requirement, but because they really truly wanted to learn what came next, right? We took their feedback on what sessions they needed next, and then Pam and Jenny planned, accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you
Andy.
so much. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Certainly. Pam, do you agree with me that our best are in the 7% set aside literacy reading allocation could be used for PD?
Yes. And in fact, the literacy team is currently reviewing 600 grants. So yes.
That's how I knew you'd know.
That's how you knew I'd know. Okay. Yes, and I would agree with you. I think that they would have come regardless, but I think once you have this knowledge, and also what has happened at the district too, at Northeastern, is they have been implementing it. So knowledge is absolutely essential. It's the foundation of all. But they have not only had that foundation of knowledge, they then have put that knowledge into practice. And as a result, their students have learned more and more rapidly. And so that is so motivating to teachers. I mean, when their kids learn more, they become on fire. All teachers want their students to excel as much as their potential. So that I think is a nice, a virtuous cycle too, but also Randy does an outstanding job of voice and choice within a framework. So the framework, of course, was a science of reading, but it was also directed by the teachers. They were choosing topics that they felt would really, they wanted the knowledge and the practice related to it. So there was some voice and choice in there too. So I think that made a big difference.
Thanks, Pam. I was thinking about this too, that I wanted to mention. I think it's really essential that that when schools are moving in any direction, whether it's the science of reading or related to another topic, our reading specialists and our classroom teachers and our building level administrators were all in the mix. Like everybody was side by side learning and working through, so that, you know, when we're in a PD and well, even in those first 3 days at Patton, I feel like every minute that I could ask a clarifying question, I was, because, you know, there were people at the table who were a whole lot smarter than I am about reading development. So I think that when you put those people together and everyone sees their colleagues and their supervisor learning, you know, right alongside of them, that's also helpful as well.
I agree with you.
For the implementation, you know.
It's powerful. It, really
Evaluating
is.
each
It sends a message that we're all learners, and also too that leadership is learning with you, but committed to this change. I would agree with you, Randy. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like, for example, letters is mandatory for administrators in our school district. So every time a new administrator it comes on board early, one of the first things they do at the K-6 level is get letters modules 1 through 3.
Yes. And now you have trainers. That's the other thing too, building capacity. So Patton supports school districts, intermediate units, and Patton staff as well to become certified letters trainers. And that helps too, that you have built that internal capacity. So Susan Herman, you had a question. Would you like to unmute? Or I can ask it for you. It's up to you.
Now, I was curious about, I know you talked a little bit about the reading specialist roles, that you were seeing lots of kids, and then the pandemic came and you shifted. But I was curious about your roles now as reading specialists, what you do. Do you have separate coaches? Because I am a reading specialist. It's very difficult, I know, to get it all in, but I wasn't sure what your role is right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd love to answer that one. We definitely wear both hats. I would say, you know, the majority of our school day when kids are there, you know, we are in that reading specialist role. So we're constantly seeing kids, you know, in and out of our room. But, you know, during those other times, we kind of put on that coaching hat. So those are those meetings before school. There are things after school, you know, they're during the school day collaborating with teachers. But a really exciting thing this year is we're working with the IU building to develop a district-wide coaching plan. And so we're following the Jim Knight model, and we're reading his book right now as a reading team. It's called The Impact Cycle. It's wonderful so far. We love it. He talks all about how you develop a hunger for learning, and you do that by having really deep conversations and engaging in deep coaching. He says deep coaching gets to the core of who we are, and it changes our assumptions about how we do what we do. And from deep coaching, you experience that deep learning, which we know is really vital to making these big mindset changes. So yes, we're doing both. We're doing that coaching piece and the reading specialist piece, you know, and, you know, I think someone said it earlier, when you know better, you do better. And we're just constantly trying to learn and grow, you know, every single day so that that can spread through that coaching as well. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for that, the book title too. That sounds interesting. So, and what is like your ratio of like how many reading specialists do you have in the primary building?
We have 8 K3 reading specialists. It depends on the building. One building has 3 reading specialists, another has 2, and the other 2 buildings have 1.5-ish. But to go along with what Amanda said too about the coaching and how to kind of balance that, and with implementing the new curriculum, I know in our building prior to this year, so 2021, the beginning of the year, when we started implementing things, we kind of tried to send out an email to say, hey, our doors open on this day from 8 to 8:30. If you have questions about foundations, come on down. Or like we kind of gave a topic based on, we were finding teachers were coming here and there, and we would reflect and say, that'd be a great question for everybody to talk about or everybody to hear. So we kind of started to try that at the beginning of the year, and we haven't really gotten back into that since the new year started. But that was something that teachers would come and ask questions, and it wasn't a presentation from us. It was more of a come, let's chat and talk. And that kind of gave us the coaching time, but having the good conversations and supporting them with the curriculum as well.
Thank you. That's helpful. Very helpful.
I think that
Susan,
was
just to give you a little frame of reference, I think it was your question. We have about, at the K through 6 level, we have about 1 reading specialist per 120 to 150 students. So it's in there, in that range. That's how we assign our reading specialists to buildings based on enrollment. So there's a common ratio, sort of.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks. And Tanya, Marat had a question around a recording and reporting progress, but I think that may have been answered. But Tanya, if you feel like you would like to follow up with that question, please unmute.
Yeah, I had another question. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to the layers of data protocol or data analysis that you use. It's very clear that there's a emphasis on your most struggling students, but I was wondering if you're using the data to drive core instruction at a macro level.
So I think I'm understanding what you're asking, and ladies jump in at any point. But so, you know, this being the second year of implementation at our K1 level, what we've done is more make adjustments to our scope and sequence based on performance. Like if the teachers were noticing, because we met, I think every 3 cycles, I just pre-scheduled them last year. So I met with the curriculum writers and the reading specialists every 18 school days. And we kind of do like just a touch base. How is it going? And we had like a running agenda. And so there were times when they would say, we need more time on this. This is not, we're never going to be done. And so we would adjust the scope and sequence. But you know, or if it's that the students aren't learning something as we would have predicted. I don't know if that answers your question. Ladies, do you have something else to say about that?
Well, I think too, like the classroom teachers do still use a cadence and to help group their students within their classroom. The ones that aren't struggling, they still use that data as well. We have benchmarks 3 times a year. Now, if there would be a student that they are considering like on the cusp of possibly needing extra support, we ask them to progress monitor them as well so that we have continuing data. And we look at that data, and if we feel that they do need to have Title I support, they will join us if it's not at a benchmark time of year. They also have asked, you know, sometimes we will give them the 95% group assessments as well, or they will within the classroom for extra data to help them within the classroom. I'm not sure if that also helps answer your question.
That's great. Thank you.
We also
Thanks,
rely pretty
Tanya.
heavily on the 95% phonics screener, the PSI. So we're constantly going back to that too. And I feel like that's one area where we're using it a lot more this year to change our instruction and really being more responsive to that data. So it's not only tracking whether a student is accurate in each skill, but we're looking at how fluent they are. And we kind of added in a fluency component there. So it's really interesting to watch some of those kids grow in those skills and accuracy. You know, and then that fluency piece is kind of the last piece to come along. And for some kids, that fluency piece is a lot harder, which is very telling too about how they are as a learner. So just looking at all of that data and having those good conversations with teachers. I know we feel like we're just constantly looking at those numbers. And I think Pam's probably going to correct me on the saying, I don't remember it but assess as much as you need to, but not more than you have to. And that's kind of been our motto. If we're collecting that data, we need to be using it, and we need to make sure that it's meaningful.
Yeah, great job there, Amanda. You got it. I think I got all the questions. The last one was from Marcy, I think. In case, and if I missed one, please speak up. But Marcy had a question, and Marcy, would you like to unmute? Marcy Rickroad. I know Marcy, so I just was calling by her first name.
Yes, I was wondering just how you all got started in this effort. Is this something that your administration came to you about and you were curious in how to go about making this significant change? Or is this something that was more a grassroots effort at the teacher or the reading specialist level?
I feel like Christy kind of talked a little bit about her aha moment earlier, and I think that's really what it was. It was each of us experiencing these aha moments, and it kind of, the need to make those changes just grew organically as we were learning more and becoming more aware and more knowledgeable about the science of reading. So I guess I'll say that primarily it was reading specialist led, very much with Randy on board and a part of that team. But then like Randy mentioned earlier, our administrators are always participating in the PD. Everyone goes to that letters training. And so, you know, they also are super involved in the process and very supportive, because they were seeing that why we need to make a change. And it made so much sense when we started looking at our past practices that I think Steph talked about earlier. You know, even just going back to, like, it doesn't make sense to have a word wall. You can't find the under T on a word wall. It's just not helpful. It doesn't align. So I think everyone having those moments, like, it was just so disjointed between what we were learning and our common practices that, you know, everyone got on board pretty quickly. So.
Thanks, Amanda. I agree. And I'll just comment that, you know, all the things that we shared in the timeline were kind of happening without any end goal in mind, except for improving student learning, right? So there wasn't, oh, we're going to transition to science of reading, and we're going to do these 3 things for that to happen. Those things were happening to just try to help our students. And then the principal the principals at 2 of our elementary schools actually reached out to me about the Dyslexia Pilot Expansion Project grant. And so we applied for that. And then that kind of gave us a lane to get in with a target at the end. And through that process, you know, to what Christy and Amanda were mentioning, that's where we were like, oh, all these things that we've been learning make sense now to do this to get there. It was pretty organic how it came together at the end, but there was, you know, Christy, I just have to mention that she sent me some text from a book that she's reading, and it really, she saw the correlation to what's been happening with science of reading. It looks like one day we woke up and we're like, oh, let's transition to science of reading. But in fact, you have to go back years at these pieces that we were doing that then came together so that at the end, it looks like it all of the sudden happened. But there were lots of things that happened along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's admirable to see how many of you just really took that on I was kind of hoping to hear it was more of a grassroots effort, because that kind of really makes it more meaningful to everyone. So thank you and well done.
And Marcy, I'm just going to add to that too. When we went through this curriculum revision process, I have to really draw some attention to the reading specialists, because our classroom teachers, they got on board with the curriculum revision process, and they were doing the work. They were putting in the hours. When we were virtual, they were in Google Meets all the time in the spring of 2020. And our reading specialists, you know, these ladies, they were right there with them, you know, giving feedback, providing guidance, writing lessons right alongside them, working on the curriculum. So no one could say this was done and handed to me because everyone had a part in it, but also no one could say I was left on my own to figure this out because they were being supported by the specialists all along the way as well. So it was really, there was a lot of collaboration. It was a really nearly perfect example, in my opinion, of how that can work to really improve the quality of education for students. It was, they worked hard and a lot.
I would agree with you. It's such a wonderful example of leadership, supporting educators, and a reading specialist team that is rock star reading specialists that collaborate and work together and always are asking questions. This team is always asking questions, looking at data. They don't rest on their laurels at all. They're always moving forward. I mean, I brag about them all the time in this school district and what they've accomplished, but again, with hard work, but everyone rowing in the same direction. Everyone's at the table. So we are at 8 o'clock, and if there's follow-up questions, Randy, what we'll do is, well, of course, it's okay to include email addresses for you and the team. Sure. And if you can send me the PowerPoint, people were asking about that, send me a PDF, I'll put that on there. And the recording for this evening will be up as soon as we can get it up. Patton does that turnaround, so we'll put that on the Wakelet. The Wakelet has all these recordings from every session, but we are just so honored and privileged to listen to you, learn from you, and continue to do so. Thank you to the reading specialist team, and to Randy. Thank you so very much. What an honor it has been to have you be a part of this PA Proud Showcase. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Pam. Something that we didn't include that I'll just mention very briefly is we also are a first 10 school district. So of this work, all of our feeder programs partner with us, and they're now doing pre-K Haggerty and pre-K foundations. And then our students have the Peli as well, coming into kindergarten. So we're really fortunate to have a community that's all, really working together for our students.
Yeah, that happens with leadership. Thanks, Randy.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll see you in February with the Indiana Area School District. So thank you everyone so much for spending your evening with us. We're so grateful for our members being a part of this journey with us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in February.